once again to EWTN's Bookmark. I'm Doug Keck, your host. Our very special guest author is Coach Lou Holtz. 3 Rules for Living a Good Life, a Game Plan for After Graduation, published by our friends at Ave Maria Publishing. Welcome, Coach Holtz. It's a great honor to have you here at EWTN after all this time. And of course, people would have seen you by now when you were on with Father Mitch talking about this particular book. And we're excited to have you here and for some of your insights. Now, where did the idea come from for this particular book, 3 Lives for Living a Good Life, a Game Plan for After Graduation?
I had done a book for Ave Maria. It was titled A Teenager's Game Plan for Life. And it was very, very successful. And I made the speech at Franciscan University's graduation. And it had, I don't know, 80-some million hits by word of mouth. Right. So they asked me if we could put that into a book. So I added a lot of different things with it. Now that I read the book, you don't need a dictionary. There are no big words, Doug. But I wished I'd added some other things in it now that I read it, but it's too late now.
Now, it's interesting, too, because you actually went to college, though you didn't plan on going to college.
Oh, no.
And you graduated in the lower third of your class. You make that point. Why did you mention that to them?
Well, I graduated in the lower third of my high school class because nobody from our family had ever gone to college. My dad had a 3rd grade education. I had no desire to go to college. When I got out of high school, all I ever wanted was a car, a girl, $5, and a job in the mill. A 49 Chevrolet. Well, I'd saved my money to buy a 49 Chevrolet. And my high school coach came up and told my parents I should go to college and become a coach. Well, my parents came in gross. Yeah, you go. Well, I didn't want to go, so we compromised and I went. That was a typical compromise with my parents. And in those days, if your father was a state taxpayer in the state of Ohio, the state school had to give you 1 semester to prove you could do it or not. There was no turning you down for admission into a certain state school. So I went to Kent State and was fortunate that I ended up graduating there and ended up with a master's degree from Iowa.
There's a lot of football connections to Kent State over the years, too. Certainly here in the state of Alabama, we certainly know that as well. It's interesting, too, because you say that there are 5 things that you assume that there are assumptions that people have. You want to be successful professionally. You want to have a good life. You want to feel you're needed. You want to feel secure about your future. You want to go to heaven. Now, you're talking about to Catholics out there, so they may be thinking about that heaven. But is that what the average young person's thinking about these days? Or maybe they should be.
Well, I think that maybe they should be. These are assumptions, and if you break down the word assume, it spells ask, you, me, but I make these assumptions on people that everybody wants to be successful professionally and want to have a good personal life. And Doug, I don't believe you have to sacrifice one at the expense of the other. Too many people think I can't have a good family, personal life, and still be successful professionally. Those are compatible. And the rules that we give there tell you how this is going to become a reality. Of course, everybody wants to feel secure about their future, but everybody wants to feel needed. And I say this to all your listening audience. If you didn't go home, would your family miss you? And if they did, why? If you didn't go to work tomorrow, would your company miss you, and why? If your company fell out of business, didn't cease to exist anymore, would they miss you? Would they miss a company, and why? Because the only people you miss in this world are those that add value to other people's lives.
Well, you say also here, you talk about the idea that the plan is simple, just don't complicate it. Let me ask you another question, because you mentioned about the coach, and I thought that was interesting. What do you think he saw in you when you were playing high school? Because you were injured, weren't you? And
no, I was injured in college. I couldn't play my senior year.
So what did he see in you that said you should be a coach?
I have no idea, but I'll say this, that I'm at Notre Dame, and his wife calls me and said, Coach Watts is very sick. And he lived in California. I said, come to practice, and took him to the game, and he came to all our Notre Dame Southern Cal games, and he told my wife, he didn't tell me, he said, yeah, when I told his parents he should go to college and be a coach, he said, I meant high school. He said, I didn't mean Notre Dame. That's what he told her. They never told me that personally, but I don't know what it was, and I always say this, if you want to make God laugh, you tell him what your plans are. I just wanted a job in the mill.
Now, let me ask you, you say, I have a strong faith in Jesus Christ. I don't know how I could live without him. Personally, I don't know how people live without constant prayer. Now, is that something you did from the beginning of you growing up and how you were raised, or is this something you came to over the years?
I was raised a Catholic on both sides of the family. Went to Catholic grade school, started out St. Anthony's, Fallowfield, ended up in St. Aloysius at East Liverpool, taught by the Sisters of Notre Dame. But faith has always been very, very strong in our family, and it's been strong in ours. That's one reason I think that we've been married 57 years.
Right.
And, you know, a couple of years ago, our house burned to the ground. So I said to everybody that the only thing you can take to heaven with you are your children. We plan on doing that. No matter where I coached, we went to Mass every Sunday as a family, and then breakfast. It doesn't matter season, non-season. That was just something that we believe in. And I don't know how you cannot believe in God. I've had back surgery. You look at your heart, you look at your brain, you look at your eyes, your ears, your reproductive system. 11 apostles died as martyrs, and you're going to tell me that happened by accident?
Right.
I don't think so.
Now, now, is it true you only went to college because ultimately your wife turned you down at the time to get married?
No, what happened in that was I was dating Beth Mahone, and I knew her in high school, but she went with a very good friend of mine. I never had a date in high school, but then we started dating after college. She went to X-ray technician school, and I went into the Army, and we were going to get married. I get out of the Army, and I'm offered a job at under a guy named Earl Biederman up near Cleveland, teaching history and being assistant backfield coach. Unbeknownst to me, my college coach was in the Navy with Forrest Evashevsky, who was the head coach at Iowa. And he asked Forrest Evashevsky to give me a graduate assistantship, which didn't happen very often in those days. But I wasn't going to take it. I'm going to get married. I'm going to make money. And at 9:30, about July 9th, she told me she didn't want to get married. She wanted to date her old boyfriend. And I wanted to get as far away as I possibly could. I get my good friend Neville Stockdale. We get my 52 Ford Fairlane. We drive all night to Iowa. And that's when he said she and Beth and I had a love-hate relationship. You love her. She hated me.
Right.
And I end up in Iowa. We finished second in the country. My wife worked at the hospital. My mother worked. She kept saying, have Lou call me. I said, no. She ended up calling me, and that's when girls didn't call me. And we got everything straight. And we ended up getting married, and that was 57 years ago. We're still happily married to this day.
She said opposites attract, didn't she?
Oh, she said opposites attract and then attack. And we are different as opposites. We are different as night and day, except we share the same core values.
Right. And then what you need for your life, you tell about a story about don't make the same mistake that I made. Everyone does dumb things, but there's one thing in particular I regret. What was that?
I think that, I don't recall exactly how I worded that, but the thing that I regret is that you went to Notre Dame, we took program on the bottom, we took at the very top, and for 9 straight years, we went to a January 1 bowl, the sugar, the cotton, the orange, or the fiesta. Nobody's done it before. Nobody's done this. And we maintained it. And why I regret that, there's a rule of life. You're either growing or you're dying. And a tree's either growing or it's dying. So is grass. So is a marriage. And so is a person. Doesn't have a thing to do with age. Has everything to do. Am I trying to get better? Am I trying to achieve something? Or am I just trying to maintain your life? And I don't care whether you're talking about your religious life. There are too many people that say, well, I just maintain my religious life. Or you should always have things you want to aspire to, because if you don't, you have no excitement, no enthusiasm. When I left Notre Dame, I never thought I'd coach again. Where'd it go from Notre Dame? According to my mother, go directly to heaven and sit by the Pope. You don't coach anymore. So that's why I say I've done a lot of dumb things. That's the thing I truly regret.
Where did you go that the average age of the people was deceased?
I was Florida, but I always said we moved to a town, the average age deceased, which means I am going to, Father Hesburgh said this best, and I'm an old man. He said, I'm going to do everything I can possibly do, and I'm going to do it as well as I possibly can, and I'm going to do it for as long as I possibly can. But no longer am I going to worry about the things I can no longer do. And I think about that. My balance is not as good. My golf game's not as good. I don't hit the ball as far. I'm not going to worry about that. I can't do that any longer. But I am going to enjoy the things I'm capable of doing. And my schedule is hectic. You know, here one day, and I told my wife, when I get old, I can't do this. As long as I'm young, I can keep the schedule up.
But you're still young. So
I'm still young.
So you're still moving ahead.
Yeah.
Now, in the section, do what is right, and you do have the right question. It says, how do you know what is right? And that's what a lot of people feel. And you also made this point, don't borrow someone else's original idea.
Well, I think that we should think for ourselves that just because somebody says something or so, oh, that must be true, I'll carry that on. It's what do you believe? What are your thoughts? What are your evaluations? What is your decision and your judgment on what you think is important?
Right. You also make the point, it says, sometimes doing what is right seemed to take me away from my long-range goal, but still I kept to the plan, and ultimately that worked out.
Well, there's never a right time to do the wrong thing. There's never a wrong time to do the right thing. And what I was referring to was when I'm at William and Mary, and NC State was considering me for a position. They wanted to interview me during this season. I wouldn't do it because I felt it was unfair to the football team I had to have your coach talking to another school about a job. And the reason they wanted to do that was signing date was the first Saturday in December. They wanted to coach in place by the end of the year. Well, I couldn't do that. That wasn't right. They said, well, we'll move on, and lo and behold, we played North Carolina. They had a great football team. We're a little William Mary, more Marys than Williams, but we get down there and we led them most of the game. We had 35-28, 2 minutes to go, and they threw a long pass. It's incomplete. They ruled it complete. I get 2 15-yard penalties, never used profanity. They score in the last minute, go for 2, beat us 36-35. But it convinced North Carolina State to say, okay, we will wait to the end of the season to talk to you. And by doing what you felt was right for your players, it worked out. That's what I was referring to there.
Right.
Sometimes it doesn't, but you have to, you'll feel comfortable when you put your head on your pillow that you tried to do the right thing.
You had some questions about the officiating in that particular game.
There's no, that ball bounced twice. The guy jumped on it like a fumble. You catch a ball here, you recover a fumble that way.
Right. You make the point that discipline is not what you do to somebody. Discipline is what you do for somebody.
When you discipline somebody in the long run, you're really teaching them a very, very good lesson. I always say this. I've never disciplined anybody in my life. People say, well, that's wrong. You sent your leading ground gainer and leading receiver home the morning of the game when you number 1 was playing number 2. We're 10-0 playing Southern Cal.
Notre Dame.
And we sent 2 players home, and we put them on the airplane. I thought, oh, I wouldn't do that again. I'd put them on the bus. I mean, they got home 4 hours. Should have taken them 4 days, but that wasn't my choice. Hey, we suspended 3 athletes, scored 78% of our touchdowns before a big bowl game with Oklahoma. That wasn't my choice. They chose that. All I do is enforce the choices they make. Whatever happens to you, good or bad, it's going to be because choices you make. You choose to do drugs, drop out of school, join a gang, get tattoos all over, get arrested. You're choosing to have difficulty in life, and stop blaming me for the choices you make. Right. We have to start getting to the point where we hold people accountable for the decisions they make, and they understand the ramifications from the choices we make.
Do you see that as a bigger problem today maybe than it was in the past?
Oh, I think it's because maybe it's not taught as well at home. You know, today is a little different. When I grew up, the one thing was taught in the home and was reinforced in the school was respect. Respect for parents, respect for elders, respect for coaches, respect for teachers, respect for the law. And today that's sort of pushed aside, and that's bad for this country.
Right. You talk about 2 suggestions. Don't let your problems make you bitter, which sounds, pretty good. But then you say, don't tell anyone your problems.
Hey, don't tell people about your problems. 90% don't care, and the other 10% are glad you got them. So you're better off to
keep use it against you.
You better keep them doing that. But the one thing I have learned is this, Doug, and being an old man where my birthday candles cost more than the cake, is no matter how old you live to, you always have problems, you always have concerns, there's always going to be something that you have a challenge in front of you. And you have to, it isn't that you're ever going to not have problems, but you have to learn how to handle them, how to cope with them, how to deal with them, and decide what you can solve and what you can't. And the things that you can't control, you got to let go and move on with your life.
Now, can you tell me what is the difference between Notre Dame and Cheerios?
Well, that came about in a bowl game. We were playing Florida in the Sugar Bowl, coached by Steve Spurrier. We were an underdog in the game because we'd had some injuries, but I felt we'd win, and we took our family to Orlando over Christmas because I always wanted a team to be home with her family over Christmas. We took our wife and 4 children out to dinner, and the waiter came up and he said, "What's the difference between Notre Dame and Cheerios?" And I said, "I don't have a clue." He said, "Cheerios belong in a bowl, ha, ha, ha." And, you know, it made me mad. I've been in the state of Florida. We're going to play in the Sugar Bowl, and I'm competitive, and I get mad. And my wife said to me, "You cannot let other people control your attitude. You can't let what somebody says affect the way you're going to be." She said, "You're going to let somebody you never met before, you're never going to see again, doesn't care a thing about you, ruin an evening with your family because something stupid he said." And she was so accurate about that. And why should I let him ruin the evening? We had a great evening. And a little later, I called him over, and I said to him, I said, "What's the difference between Lou Holtz and a golf pro?" He said, "I don't have a clue." I said, "A golf pro gives tips," which he found out when the meal was over. Now, he later went on to become a disc jockey in Orlando. He's asked me to be on his show.
Oh, really?
I said, "No way will I be on that show." But he went on bragging about he was guy, because after the bowl game, we beat Florida. They went in and they said, "What are you going to do? Expect me to say I'm going to go to Disneyland?" I said, "I'm going to find that sucker that ruined my evening with the Cheerio story." So that's how it came about.
You talk about in here, do everything to the best of your ability, obligations and responsibilities. You say now if you want to fail, you have the right to fail. However, you do not have the right to cause others to fail because you're not doing everything to the best of your ability.
No, I believe that very, very strongly. I think this, that, you know, the free enterprise system, the capitalistic system, doesn't guarantee you success, guarantees you the opportunity to succeed or fail. It's going to be dependent upon your efforts, your intelligence, your commitment. But there are too many people in this world that think they have a right to do things. People say, "What's the difference today and 40 years ago?" Today, everybody talks about their rights and their privileges. 40 years ago, they talked about their obligations and their responsibilities. You join a business, you join the military, you join a spouse, you bring a child into the world, you have obligation, you have responsibility. If you want to fail, you have the right to fail. You do not have the right to cause somebody else to fail because you don't fulfill your commitment.
In a section here you wrote in number 3, show people that you care. Trust and caring go hand in hand. You were at the University of South Carolina and you said, "I felt it was primarily you were having trouble with the team because the players did not trust me." How does a coach sense that or know that?
Well, I'd been there 18 months. And the thing I want to point out, everything in that book absolutely happened. There's nothing that's exaggerated or anything else. But we found out it was early June. We had the longest losing streak in the country. I'd been there 1 year. We were 0-11. And I found out at 5 o'clock that 2 players that afternoon were arrested for selling drugs. Now, they weren't on the team then. They were on the team the year before. But they were arrested that afternoon for selling drugs. Had no team in summer school. They ate dinner at 6 o'clock. I said I want team meeting at 7. And I went in the team meeting, and I was mad because I'd been there 18 months, and the players didn't trust me enough to tell me that was going on. They knew it was going on. I didn't know. Why didn't they tell me? You think of the headlines of the paper the next day. I was mad. And everybody has an assigned seat in our team meeting room, freshmen in the back, and each year you move up. And I'm talking to the seniors, and I really wanted to know why. To me, I don't care whether you like me, but why didn't you trust me to do the right thing? And nobody said anything. That a young man got up, Jonathan Martin, I'll never forget. He said, "Coach, I trust you." He said, "I believe his team trusts you, but a lot of my teammates I can't trust." And he went on, and Andre Goodman, I'll never forget, played 11 years in the NFL, was a junior, got up and said, I agree with him. And what came out of that meeting was there was no trust, and there was no commitment, and there wasn't a genuine care for one another. And so I had the manager give him a sheet of paper and write down everything they did to
that was really interesting.
that violated those
Was
three
that the
things.
first time you did that? Or
Yeah, I
you done
hadn't
that
planned
before?
on it, but it just came and say a little prayer, and it came next day. What am I going to do with it? So class ended at 2 o'clock, so followed me. We went out to the practice field. In South Carolina had a tradition. Every time they won a big game on the road, they put a little tombstone, had the date, the name, the score, the opponent. It wasn't a very big graveyard, but that afternoon or that morning I had a tombstone delivered this big blank. And we dug a hole and put all the papers in it and burned it and covered up and made a commitment to one another that whatever happened in the past, but from that point on, we're going to be committed to one another, and we're going to trust one another, and we're going to care about one another. And 6 months later, we had the second greatest turnaround in the history of NCAA football.
I was going to say, because I was going to ask you, you said, I told them the coaches I'd expect to see a different group of young men, so you did see a different group of young men.
Completely.
You said the easiest way to be a caring member of a group is to feel a stake in the group and to be truly involved.
I think if you understand that you're part of it, I put it like this. I want everybody in your audience to picture a train wreck. Boy, there goes that, wow, is that going to be a bad train wreck? Because they're all going to watch that train wreck from a safe distance away. Now, you're going to have a huge train wreck, but you're on the train. Now you're going to start figuring out how can we make sure, how can we avoid this train wreck, because you're part of the situation. When you feel you're part of something, you're going to take greater pride in seeing that it succeeds. You're going to take ownership in something.
Right. You say, as for me, I've received several recognitions in my life, but they are never for what I did.
That's true. Whether it be the Hall of Fame or a coach of the area, people, you know, Tim Brown's in the Hall of Fame. So many football players I coach are in the Hall of Fame. They're in the Hall of Fame because of what they did. I'm in the Hall of Fame because of what players and administrators and other people did. I never made a tackle or anything else along that line. All I tried to do was provide an incentive and a direction to go.
Mm-hmm. Now, the other thing you were talking about, the Heisman Trophy, a player who wins the award never gives an acceptance speech filled with long lists of his personal statistics. No, he makes sure to thank his parents, his high school coaches, etc. The one question I have is, why is it that every football player always thanks mom from the field and not dad?
You know, and I've analyzed that, but there's a distinct reason. Remember this, the mother is the one that feeds him. The mother is the one that's usually there when he's home, etc. That he doesn't see the commitment the father makes as well, or the sacrifices he makes. But the mom is the one around. We got a dog. I always wanted our children to have a dog. Now all our children have a dog for their children. But I want to tell you, my wife was home during the day. She fed the dog. That dog loved my wife. That dog would follow her wherever, and the other children would try to lay crumbs to bring them. But Mom was the one that fed the dog. And when you're there, that mama is the one that cares about you, gave birth to you. There's no doubt. And most important job in our family was my wife's, raising our children. There's no doubt about it that she had the final say on those things, and God bless her, she did a tremendous job.
Now, did you really want to be a garbage collector when you were a little kid?
Yeah, because I only worked on Tuesdays. I thought that's a good deal. I didn't know any better, you know. I came one time, and my dad went to the third grade, and nobody in our family ever got to college. I didn't have any aspirations to go do anything. It just happens. You know, God has a plan for you, and what I've learned is, and the one thing I hope people will get out of this book is, I wished when I got out of college that how little talent I felt I had, I still had as much talent as anybody else. That all the things you're capable of doing, not because you're going to go do it, but just do everything best your ability, but believe in yourself and set some goals and some directions, and then follow those 3 rules. And when I made those 5 assumptions, you follow those 3 rules. They'll happen, because here I want you to take somebody that you love and admire and respect, and somebody you got a problem with. You put those 3 questions on both people, you'll find that when you admire and respect, you just said yes to all 3 questions. You can trust them, they're committed, they care. Person you got a problem with, you'll find out, whether it be in this studio or anywhere else, either you can't trust me, aren't committed, they don't care. Don't complicate life.
Now, were you 28 when you put that original list together?
No, I was a little bit older than that. And what really happened with that was, I was coaching at William Mary, and had gone there from Ohio State, and we had won the national championship. Great leader in Woody Hayes, and I was going to be like Woody Hayes, but I could be like Woody Hayes, and I didn't have the players Woody Hayes had. And the first year was a disaster. Then I sat down and tried to look and analyze why some people are very successful, and you want to be around them, and other people aren't. And I took a list of players, coaches, teachers, business people, friends, relatives, and put them in both categories. And what was the difference? It wasn't age, wasn't sex, wasn't intelligence, wasn't ethnicity. It was all, you could trust them, you couldn't trust them, they were committed, they didn't care, and these people cared, and they did. And that's how the 3 rules come up. And you know what? That was probably 50 years ago, never needed a 4th rule yet. Nobody's ever said,
So
no, those 3 rules don't cover it.
But one thing, as we go out the door, it was interesting too, you talk about what are your goals, and one of the things you make the point out is the whole idea of what personal sacrifices are you willing to make?
Well, I think when you set down your goals and you decide what you want to do, you need to answer some honest questions. For example, we want to win a championship. Okay, then answer these questions. What personal sacrifices are you willing to make to do that? What financial sacrifice you willing to make to do that? You aren't going to be able to work in the summer and get paid. What skills and talents do you have to acquire in order to do this? What bad habits do you have to get rid of in order to do this? Who do you have to work with in order to do this? You answer those questions, it will tell you whether you have a wish list or whether you have a goal. And I'd say this as I told our children. When you decide what you want to do in life, you find 3 things. Find something you like to do. Find something you do well. Find somebody to pay you to do it. If you don't find somebody to pay you to do it, you got a hobby.
Right.
If you find somebody to pay you to do it, you got a career.
Very good. Thank you so much, Coach. It's great to spend some time with you, get to talk to you about your book, 3 Rules for Living a Good Life, a game plan for after graduation, available through our EWTN religious catalog. EWTNRC.com is the place. Check it out. Check us out next time right here on EWTN's Bookmark. Thank you.